The snowstorm came suddenly, covering the road in a thick blanket of white. Samantha gripped the steering wheel tightly, her heart racing as the car struggled up the icy mountain road. She didn't want to be here, but there was no going back. Her past was like a shadow, chasing her no matter how far she ran. When the car finally sputtered and stopped, she saw a small cabin through the heavy snowfall. It looked old and lonely, but the sight of it gave her hope. With no other choice, she grabbed her bag and pushed through the storm toward the cabin. Inside, it was cold and silent, but the fireplace was already lit. Someone had been here recently. Samantha's stomach twisted as she scanned the room. There were muddy boots near the hearth and a blanket folded neatly on the sofa. She hesitated, but the storm outside left her no choice. Hours passed, and just as she started to relax, the door creaked open. A man walked in, shaking the snow off his coat. He smiled warmly, introducing himself as Sonny. He seemed friendly, but something about him felt strange. Sonny stayed, and the storm kept them trapped together. He was charming and talkative, always sharing stories and trying to make her laugh. At first, Samantha felt uneasy, but over time, his warmth started to feel comforting. Yet, there were moments when his kindness felt too perfect, and his questions about her life felt too probing. One night, Samantha found a journal tucked under the sofa. Its pages were filled with notes, sketches of the area, and a list of names. Her name was there, circled in bold. Fear gripped her as she realized Sonny wasn't here by accident. When she confronted him, his cheerful facade disappeared. He told her she hadn't found the cabin by chance. Sonny claimed he was waiting for her and that they were connected in ways she couldn't understand. His words confused and terrified her, but the storm outside made escape impossible. Sonny's behavior became darker, and Samantha felt trapped, not just in the cabin but in a game she didn't know how to play. The storm finally began to clear, but Samantha knew she couldn't just walk away. Sonny's words haunted her, and the things he seemed to know about her life made her question everything. The cabin wasn't just a shelter, it held secrets she had spent years trying to forget. To leave, Samantha had to face Sonny and the truths he forced her to confront. The question was whether she had the strength to do it, or if Sonny's hold on her would become permanent. The storm raged outside, but the cabin felt warmer than it should have. Sonny seemed too comfortable, like the place belonged to him, even though Samantha had been the first to arrive. His smile was easy, but his eyes betrayed something sharper. Samantha watched him closely as he moved about the room, making himself at home. He spoke casually, asking questions about her life, but his tone hinted at something more. She avoided his gaze, answering only what she had to, but she could feel his curiosity pressing against her defenses. Sonny's charm wasn't effortless, it was calculated. He had a way of making her feel seen, but not in the way she wanted. Every laugh, every glance, every friendly gesture felt like a move in a game she didn't know the rules to. He claimed he'd stumbled on the cabin by chance, caught in the storm just like her, but the way he talked about the area didn't add up. He knew too much about the mountains, the storms, and even the cabin itself. Samantha tried to act normal, but her unease grew. She caught him looking at her bag once, his smile fading for just a moment before he turned away. That night, she barely slept, her ears straining for every creak and groan the old cabin made. In the morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Sonny humming a tune she didn't recognize. It was almost domestic, but it didn't put her at ease. The tension only grew when Sonny began talking about the cabin's history. He said it was a place where people came to hide, to escape things they couldn't face. Funny how life brings us to the places we're meant to be, he said, his tone light but his words heavy. Samantha didn't respond, but the weight of his statement lingered in the air. By the third day, another presence disrupted their fragile balance. A woman arrived, battered by the storm and desperate for shelter. Her name was Claire, and her arrival changed everything. She looked shaken, her eyes darting between Samantha and Sunny like she didn't trust either of them. Her presence brought a new layer of tension, and Sunny's demeanor shifted. He was polite, but his energy grew sharper, his gaze more calculating. Samantha didn't trust Claire, but something about the woman's fear mirrored her own. Claire's hands trembled as she spoke, her words rushed and uneven. She claimed she was just passing through, but her eyes told a different story. Sunny seemed to enjoy watching the two women try to figure each other out, his smile growing wider with every awkward pause. The cabin felt smaller with Claire there, the air heavier. Samantha tried to piece together what was happening, but the answers felt just out of reach. Sunny's charm turned into something colder, more controlling, as he began to steer every conversation. Claire avoided his questions, her fear growing more obvious with every passing hour. Samantha realized she wasn't just trapped by the storm, she was trapped in a web of secrets she didn't understand. Sunny knew more than he let on, and Claire's arrival wasn't an accident. The storm outside mirrored the storm building inside the cabin, and Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that it was all about to break. The betrayal hit like a thunderclap, shattering the uneasy balance inside the cabin. Samantha stood frozen, her pulse pounding in her ears as Sunny's words echoed in the small room. He was no longer smiling, no longer trying to hide the edge in his tone. "I didn't just end up here, Sam," he said, his voice calm but his eyes cold. "I came for you." Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the table, her breath quick and shallow. Her mind raced to make sense of what he was saying. For 3 days, he had played the role of the charming stranger, but now his mask had slipped, revealing something darker. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, though her voice wavered. Sunny leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her unravel. "You think it's a coincidence, don't you? That you found this cabin? That I found you? But it's not. I've been following you, Sam, for months." The room spun as his words sank in. Samantha felt a wave of nausea rise in her stomach, her legs trembling as she struggled to stay upright. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Before Sunny could answer, Claire stepped forward, her face pale but her expression sharp. "He's lying," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Samantha turned to her, desperate for some clarity, but the look in Claire's eyes only deepened her confusion. "He's not here for you, Sam," Claire continued, her tone brittle. "He's here for me." "What?" Samantha's voice cracked as she looked between them, the walls of the cabin seeming to close in around her. Sunny's laugh was low and bitter. "Oh, Claire," he said, shaking his head. "Still spinning your little stories, I see." Claire's face hardened, her fear replaced by anger. "You think I don't know what you've done? You think I don't know why you're really here?" she shot back. The tension between them crackled like the fire in the hearth, and Samantha felt like a spectator to a play she didn't understand. Her heart raced as the weight of the moment pressed down on her. Claire's accusations, Sunny's calm denial, it was too much. "Will someone just tell me the truth?" she shouted, her voice breaking under the strain. Sunny's gaze shifted back to Samantha, his expression softening in a way that made her stomach turn. "The truth," he said quietly, "is that Claire has been running from me for years. She's been dragging you into something you don't belong in, Sam." Claire's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. Samantha looked at her, searching for answers, but the woman's face betrayed nothing but guilt. "Is that true?" Samantha asked, her voice trembling. Claire didn't answer. The silence was deafening, and Samantha's chest tightened as the room seemed to grow colder. The betrayal was too much, the lies piling up faster than she could process. Her hands clenched into fists as anger bubbled to the surface. "Both of you are lying," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to be a pawn in your games." She turned toward the door, her mind set on leaving, but Sonny's voice stopped her in her tracks. "You can't leave, Sam," he said, his tone low and dangerous. "Not until you know the truth. Not until you understand why you're really here." Samantha's breath caught in her throat as she turned back to face him. "And what truth is that?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to hear the answer. Sonny stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "The truth is, none of this is an accident," he said. "You're not as innocent as you think you are, Sam. You've been lying to yourself for years. And it's time you remembered." The weight of his words sent a chill down her spine, and she felt her knees buckle. Sonny reached out as if to steady her, but she pulled away, her heart hammering in her chest. The betrayal wasn't just his or Claire's. It was something deeper, something buried within her. The storm outside seemed to echo the chaos inside her as the walls of her carefully constructed life began to crumble. The air in the cabin was suffocating, thick with mistrust and unspoken truths. Samantha's mind raced as the storm outside howled, rattling the windows as if urging her to flee. But there was nowhere to go. Sonny's words hung in the air, their weight pressing down on her chest. He knew something about her, something she had buried so deeply even she couldn't fully recall it. Claire's silence only made it worse. "What do you mean, I've been lying to myself?" Samantha demanded, her voice cracking with frustration. "What do you know about me that I don't?" Sonny stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. His calm demeanor was unnerving, like he had all the time in the world to unravel her. "You think you're just some woman running from her past," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "But there's more to your story, Sam. More than you want to admit." Claire scoffed from the corner, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Don't listen to him," she snapped. "He's trying to manipulate you. That's what he does. He finds people's cracks and widens them until they shatter." Samantha's head whipped toward Claire. "And what about you?" she shot back. "What aren't you telling me? You showed up here out of nowhere, looking like you've seen a ghost. What are you running from?" Claire flinched at the accusation, her expression crumbling for a moment before she recovered. "I was trying to warn you," she said, her voice trembling. "But maybe it's already too late." Samantha's stomach churned. "Warn me about what?" Neither of them answered, and the silence drove her closer to the edge. She felt like a pawn on a chessboard, moved by forces she didn't understand. Her fists clenched at her sides as she tried to make sense of the chaos. "I deserve the truth," she shouted, her voice raw. "Whatever it is, just tell me." Sonny let out a heavy sigh, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "The truth is painful, Sam," he said. "And I don't think you're ready for it." "That's not your choice to make," she snapped, her voice fierce despite the fear clawing at her. Sonny hesitated, his expression unreadable. "Finally," he said, "you didn't just end up here by chance. The storm didn't bring you here. I did." The room spun as Samantha tried to process his words. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. "I've been following you, watching you," Sonny admitted, his voice steady. "Not to hurt you, but to protect you. From her." He pointed at Claire, whose face twisted with rage. "You're lying," Claire hissed, her voice like venom. "You've been hunting me, not her. You're trying to use her against me, just like you use everyone." "Enough," Samantha shouted, her voice breaking through their argument. "I don't care who's lying or who's telling the truth. I just want to know what this has to do with me." Sonny's eyes softened again, but there was a sadness in them that made her stomach drop. "You've been running from the truth your whole life, Sam," he said quietly. "But it's time to stop. You're the key to this. To everything." The words made no sense, yet they sent a jolt of fear through her. She looked at Claire, hoping for some clarity, but the other woman looked just as shaken. "What does he mean?" Samantha asked, her voice barely a whisper. Claire hesitated, her expression torn. "You have to remember," she said finally. "It's the only way you'll understand." "Remember what?" Samantha demanded, her frustration boiling over. Claire stepped closer, her eyes searching Samantha's face. "The storm. The cabin. This isn't the first time you've been here, is it?" The question hit her like a punch to the gut. Samantha's breath caught as fragmented memories flickered in her mind. Images of snow, of a fire, of voices raised in anger. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's not possible. I've never been here before." "You have," Sonny said, his voice firm. "And you left something behind. Something we need to find before it's too late." The storm outside screamed louder, as if it too was demanding answers. Samantha's heart pounded as the pieces of the puzzle swirled around her, refusing to fit together. The tension in the room was unbearable, each passing second pulling her closer to a breaking point. She didn't know who to trust, but one thing was clear: she couldn't run from the truth any longer. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in, suffocating Samantha. Every breath she took felt shallow, like the air itself was thick with unspoken truths. The storm outside howled in fury, as if mirroring the chaos in her chest. The final confrontation was inevitable now. There was nowhere left to run, no more secrets to hide. Samantha's mind was spinning, trying to make sense of the twisted web around her. The memories were coming faster now, fragments of a past she didn't want to remember. The storm, the cabin, it wasn't a first time for her. She had been here before, and she had left something behind, something vital. The truth was clawing at her, begging to be released. But she couldn't do it, couldn't face it. Not yet. "Enough with the lies," she screamed, her voice raw and trembling. She turned to Sonny, her eyes burning with accusation. "What the hell do you want from me? You've played with my mind long enough. What do you know about me? What's your game?" Sonny's calm facade finally cracked. His expression twisted, frustration leaking through his controlled demeanor. "You don't get it, do you?" he yelled, stepping forward with a force that made Samantha's heart race. "This isn't a game, Sam. You are the game. You think I've been toying with you, but you've been playing me all along. All this time, you've been pretending to forget who you are, pretending you don't know what you've done." Claire moved toward the door, her hands shaking at her sides. "Stop it, both of you. You're going to destroy everything," she cried, her voice raw with desperation. "This isn't just about you, Sam. This is about everything, everything we've been through, everything we've lost." But Samantha couldn't hear her. She could barely hear herself over the deafening roar of her thoughts. "What do you mean, everything we've lost?" Samantha asked, her voice cutting through the tension. She felt like her mind was shattering, like the truth would break her completely. "What do you think I've lost? Who am I, really?" Sonny took a slow, deliberate breath, his eyes hardening with resolve. "You don't remember because you don't want to. But you've done things, Sam. Terrible things. And it's time to face the consequences." Samantha's stomach lurched. She stepped back, shaking her head in disbelief. No, I haven't. I couldn't." Sonny's eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there, too, something almost sad. "You killed him, Sam." The words hit like a physical blow. The air was sucked out of the room as Samantha's legs gave way beneath her, her mind reeling. "What?" she gasped, struggling to breathe. I never." "Yes," Sonny said, his voice low and cold. "You did. You killed him. The man you thought you loved. And I was there to help you cover it up." The world tilted beneath her. Her heart hammered in her chest, her vision blurring as the memories rushed back in flashes. The man's face, the rage in his eyes, the anger that had turned to violence. The night she had been pushed too far. It all came back now, like a nightmare coming to life. She had pushed him. She had done it. You weren't supposed to remember, Sonny continued, his voice a harsh whisper. But the past always catches up to you. It's the reason Claire's here. It's the reason we're all here. To make sure you never forget what you've done. Samantha's breath came in ragged gasps as she fought to keep herself together. The storm outside howled louder, the wind battering the windows like the fury inside her chest. I didn't mean to, she whispered, her words a broken plea for forgiveness. You didn't mean to? Claire's voice was venomous now, her anger rising. You didn't mean to? You took everything from me, Sam. You took him from me. Samantha's eyes snapped to Claire, the rawness in her gaze cutting deep. What are you talking about? Who was he to you? He was mine. Claire screamed, her face twisted in grief and rage. And you killed him, and you destroyed me in the process? The truth hit Samantha like a wave, drowning her. Claire had loved him. And Samantha, she had taken him from them both. The weight of it was unbearable, and her knees gave way. She collapsed to the floor, shaking as the room spun around her. Sonny stepped forward, his hand reaching out, not to comfort her, but to claim her. We tried to protect you, Sam, he said, his voice colder than ever. But you've made your choices. Now, we all have to live with them. The finality of his words echoed in her ears, and the room felt too small, too suffocating. The storm outside raged against the cabin, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside her mind. Everything she had known, everything she had built, was falling apart. The man she had loved, the lies, the guilt, it all crashed down on her like a landslide. Samantha's voice trembled as she whispered, I'm sorry. I never wanted this. I never wanted any of it, but the damage was done, and no apology could undo the truth. The silence that followed was suffocating, a heavy weight that seemed to press down on Samantha's chest, making it hard to breathe. The storm outside had finally begun to calm, its furious howls replaced by the soft, steady drumming of rain against the windows. But the storm inside her heart had not yet passed. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no escaping it. Sonny stood by the door, his back turned to her, his expression unreadable. Claire had retreated to the far corner of the room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes swollen from the tears that had yet to stop flowing. Samantha could feel the anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak that had been unleashed between them all. But it wasn't just the storm that had torn them apart, it was the weight of their shared past, the choices they had made, the lives they had shattered. Samantha's mind was a blur. She could still hear the echo of Sonny's words, feel the coldness of his accusation, the finality of it. She had killed him, the man she had once loved. She had killed him with her own hands, her own rage, her own fear. It had all come crashing down on her, shattering everything she thought she knew about herself. She couldn't look at Sonny anymore. She couldn't look at Claire either. She couldn't face the people she had once trusted, the people she had once called family. She had been running from the truth for so long, trying to bury it beneath layers of lies and false memories. But the truth had a way of finding its way to the surface, no matter how deep you buried it. I never meant for any of this to happen, Samantha whispered, her voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I didn't even know. I didn't remember. Sonny's gaze softened, though the bitterness in his eyes remained. You can't change what you've done, Sam, he said quietly. But you can learn from it. You can try to make things right. Or you can keep running and let it destroy you. Samantha didn't know how to respond. How could she possibly make amends for something so terrible, something so irreversible? The man was gone, and nothing she said or did could bring him back. All she had was the guilt, the emptiness, the silence. Claire's voice cut through the room, sharp and filled with quiet fury. You think you can just walk away from this? She demanded. You think you can just apologize and expect it all to go away? You took everything from me. Everything I had left. Samantha looked at Claire, her eyes filled with remorse, but there was nothing she could say. The rift between them was too deep, the damage too far gone. She could apologize until her voice cracked, but it wouldn't be enough. Nothing could ever be enough. And so, she did what she had to do. She stood up, slowly, her legs shaking beneath her, and walked toward the door. She couldn't stay here anymore. She couldn't face the anger, the resentment, the betrayal. She couldn't fix what she had broken. All she could do was leave, to find a place where she could try to piece herself back together, though she wasn't sure there was enough left of her to be whole again. Sonny watched her, his expression unreadable. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't say anything. He knew she had to do this, knew that she had to leave in order to find some kind of peace, even if it meant losing everything in the process. The rain outside had stopped, and the world seemed eerily still. Samantha stepped out into the cold, her breath coming out in white puffs. The night was dark, but there was a faint light in the distance, the glow of a town she didn't know but would have to find her way to. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stay here. Not anymore. As she walked away, she felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the storm inside her. The silence was deafening, but it was also a kind of peace. A peace she hadn't known she needed. The past couldn't be undone, but maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to live with it. To live with herself. Behind her, the cabin remained dark and silent, the storm long gone, leaving only the memory of the damage it had caused. The truth had come out. And now, they were left to pick up the pieces, to live with the consequences of their actions. Samantha kept walking, her footsteps soft in the quiet night. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She could never outrun the past. But maybe, just maybe, she could learn to face it. As Samantha disappeared into the night, the weight of everything she had learned and lost seemed to settle into the world around her. The cabin, once a place of tension and turmoil, now stood silent, like the stillness that follows a storm. There was no escaping the consequences of her actions, no undoing the past. But in her heart, there was a glimmer of something more, something beyond the guilt, the anger, and the betrayal. The story of Samantha, Sonny, and Claire is not just one of loss and regret, but of the complexities of trust, betrayal, and redemption. It shows us how fragile human connections can be and how easily they can be shattered by secrets and lies. But it also offers a powerful reminder, even in the darkest moments, there is the possibility of change, of growth. Redemption is not a given, but it's something that must be earned through honesty, understanding, and the courage to face the truth, no matter how painful. We all have moments where we are faced with difficult choices, where our past actions or the actions of others come back to challenge us. Samantha's journey might not be one we wish to walk, but it's one many of us can relate to. How do we deal with the mistakes we've made? How do we face the people we've hurt, or the truth we've tried to hide? And when the weight of guilt feels unbearable, is there a way to find redemption? Or do we simply have to learn to live with the consequences? As you reflect on the story, ask yourself, what would you do if you were in Samantha's shoes? Could you find a way to move forward after such betrayal and loss? Or would you, like her, be forced to face the truth you've been running from? The themes of forgiveness and redemption resonate deeply with us all. They invite us to consider the power of second chances, not only for others, but for ourselves. After all, we are all flawed. We all make mistakes. But it's how we choose to face them, how we decide to grow from them, that defines who we truly are. As you leave this story behind, carry with you the reminder that while the past shapes us, it doesn't have to define us forever. Redemption isn't easy, but it's always possible. And in the end, it's up to each of us to decide how we'll face the truth and how we'll move forward, one step at a time.